Welcome back to the Scarlet Standard. Today, we're going to break down one of UNLV's conference competitors, San Jose State, as we head into 2025 under coach Ken Niumatalolo. They have found stability, discipline, and belief in the rise of their program. The league's media has picked San Jose State third in the preseason Mountain West poll, right behind Boise and UNLV, which shows that not only does the conference respect them, but they're starting to get respect nationally, which was founded under Brent Brennan and it has continued under Coach Niumatalolo. Joining me to dig into our breakdown of San Jose State is Nick Urias, a broadcaster for KSJS and host of the Sports Sentiment podcast. Nick, it's great to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. Pleasure to meet you. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to meet you too. Let's start a little bit with the big picture for San Jose State. Year one was a success under Coach Niumatalolo. Seminal trip and proof that the program could sustain momentum even with roster turnover when Brent Brennan left. What's the vibe around the team right now?
Man, let me tell you, the vibes are really high out here in San Jose. Like you said in your open, third in the preseason polls. San Jose State's really never been picked that high before. I mean, in year one, with the massive roster overhaul, new offensive coordinator and Craig Stutzman, just trying to reestablish the foundation with so many moving parts last year. They finished 7-6. They had the losing record in Mountain West play, but this was a team that was competitive, played a shootout versus Washington State in the non-conference game, lost that one in double overtime. The Boise State game, sold out crowd in San Jose. They lost by 3 touchdowns, but a very misleading final score. That was a very tight game.
Boise didn't pull away till late. I mean,
Yeah,
Jetti didn't get it going till late in that second half. The San Jose State led that mostly that whole game.
100%. And I was on the air for that game, and it was just one of those games where, San Jose State, a couple of coaching decisions and, ultimately gave Boise State momentum because Maddox Matson didn't have the greatest game. Like you said, Jetti took a long time for him to get going, didn't get a lot of his yards until the third and fourth quarter. That was a game that they were in. So San Jose State, despite, winning 7 games, which is just in year one with the new staff, is, I would say, very good, above expectations for what was the standard last year. Now they're expected to take a next step. Let me tell you something, Mike. The schedule, very favorable for the Spartans this year.
I mean, they avoid Boise and UNLV, which is, Boise and UNLV play each other. So if UNLV has very high expectations as well, and they could be sitting there potentially with one.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Like you said, look, you've seen a bunch of these head-to-head matchups. Boise State and UNLV, always a great game. UNLV really sold out in the box in that matchup at the Allegiant Stadium last year. Jetti was very well contained. Different story with Boise State this year, but for San Jose State, no Boise State, no UNLV on the schedule, no Colorado State either, and they get their in-state rival Fresno State at home. So, it's as favorable as it gets in the Mountain West. I've been nosediving into a bunch of these college football schedules just across the FBS, and I have to say it's just really favorable. I've been telling people, don't be shocked if San Jose State is in the Mountain West championship game, but because of that schedule. But when you look big picture, just across the G5, don't be shocked if it's a win or go home situation, how it was last year for the college football playoff. Boise State, UNLV, the prime example last year. Don't be shocked if it's whether it's Boise, UNLV, San Jose State. That Mountain West championship game could have the same high stakes as it did last year going into this year.
Because you could be potentially at that point of the season if Boise does what Boise does, and even just losing the one game to Notre Dame, say they run the table, UNLV sitting there, let's just say at 11-1 or 10-2 with one conference loss to Boise State. Those teams could both easily be ranked in the CFP playoff rankings. And then you have San Jose, at that point in the season, if they're sitting there with 8, 9, 10, 11 wins, which because their schedule can be favorable to get there, that could be another third ranked team from the Mountain West.
Yeah. And, look, next Friday night, they play Central Michigan, first year head coach and Matt Drinkle. They play a first year head coach in FCS Idaho because Jason Eck goes to New Mexico. They have the uphill battle, Texas. We'll see what they do versus Ohio State. But regardless, it's going to be a very tough game for San Jose State on the road in a hostile environment. But, you just look up and down the schedule, conference, non-conference, just across the board. It's Obviously, the Spartans and this team, they still got to go out there and, deliver. They have a whole lot of returning production on this group this year, and it's just a matter of, can this team go out there, deliver it on paper, and ultimately stack up those W's?
So it kind of leads me into my next segue. Offensively, they were a very pass heavy team last year. Walker Eggett is back at quarterback. Offensive line is very veteran strong. Should he be given time? You know, the biggest storyline is that receiver. What are they? How are they going to replace Nick Nash? Nick Nash, was a very underrated receiver going into last season. He burst on the scene, not just Mountain West wise, but nationally. Taking home basically the national triple crown. What do you think is going to, or who do you think is going to be able to step in right away and replace the production that Nash brought in the receiving core?
Yeah, so let me just say first and foremost, offensive coordinator Craig Stutzman, a second year in San Jose. The spread and shred, his offensive scheme that he likes to call it, very much variations of the run and shoot. It's going to be pass heavy. I would say, and I've been telling everybody this, that the scheme is built for the wide receivers to succeed. And, everyone's going to hit the panic button. No Nick Nash, no Justin Lockhart, who had nearly 1,000 yards receiving last year as well. It was that deep ball threat, in man coverage last year out wide. Those two guys are obviously gone, but, they reload. Leland Smith from Purdue, very limited production with the Boilermakers last year. Danny Scudero for Sac State comes in, San Jose kid. They've been recruiting this kid for a while. The Spartans have been kind of just waiting for him to hit the portal, and he did. And, they bring in Malachi Riley from Arizona. They just have tons of wide receiver weapons. I can go up and down the list here. Matthew Coleman, another prime example. He had north of 10 catches and 119 yards with the touchdown in the Hawaii Bowl last year, was kind of the big time replacement for when Nash opted out of the Hawaii Bowl last season. So they got weaponry up and down, the depth chart here. And, I've talked to Coach Craig Stutzman and Coach Ken personally, and they said, as crazy as it sounds, we might be just as deep, if not deeper, at the position this year.
It makes a lot of sense when you have, like UNLV is losing Ricky White, and you replace that massive gap per se. It opens up opportunities for other guys who either one were in the program who didn't get those opportunities, or for, a guy like, what was the guy from Sac State? What was his name?
Danny Scudero.
Yep, Danny Scudero. It gives him that chance. He probably, what do you have? He had like 700-800 yards receiving at Sac State last year.
Yeah.
On a higher level, he has the chance to elevate and prove what he can do. But it's the similar situation at UNLV where you lose Ricky White and Jacob DeJesus, but they bring in all these transfers, new guys, and it kind of creates instead of having a one go-to, you have more of an XYZ look. And it now in the spread and shred offense, it's able to open up gaps, open up holes, see things. It even makes the running game more productive. When you're so focused on pass heavy, those, zone reads, quick draws can turn into 7-8 yard pops.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's something that San Jose State wants to get a whole lot better at. And that's the ground attack. They were 130th in rushing last year. And you might be saying, okay, well, they were fifth in passing. Well, there was a lot of situations last year where San Jose State had a fourth quarter lead, 10-point cushion, and they were throwing the ball because, quite honestly, the offensive line was kind of a revolving door. There was guys coming in and out. They didn't necessarily trust some guys in certain spots, still trying to find, all the positioning and things within that nature. They trusted the running backs, but the holes just weren't really there. So the Spartans didn't really necessarily have the luxury of running the ball successfully to move the sticks, drill the clock in the fourth quarter. They're trying to get back to that. And, San Jose State, that's something that they've wanted to do. They've always kind of said, like, hey, we want to rely on the run game. They got 4 starters back on the offensive line, so I expect the 130th in rushing to improve. But at the same time, I expect the 5th in passing from last year to drop off a little bit. I wouldn't really expect to see those numbers, even though this is going to be a pass-first team. But I think overall they'll just be a little bit more balanced, which I think will ultimately benefit this team in the long run, because they will be able to, control the clock. And depending on what the situation may be in some of these games, they might be able to close it out a different way.
What is the expectation that has been around the program for Walker Eggett? Is he going to take that is the expectation for him to take that next step?
Yeah. And, last year was, Mike, you probably watched those San Jose games last year, especially in conference play, where it was just honestly a mystery on who was going to be the quarterback, especially in conference play. Emmett Brown started the season last year was very productive for 4 games. The Nevada defense really figured him out. Jeff Choate, really good coach, game planned him very well. And look, Emmett Brown very struggled in the game big time. Walker Eget comes in fourth quarter, cold turkey, been sitting on the bench for 3 hours and takes this team on a game-winning drive. And ever since that game, it was a mess at quarterback. Craig Stutzman was running this 2 quarterback system where it was just both quarterbacks coming in and out. Both guys didn't really want to admit it, but I would say it was probably killing their rhythm a little bit, especially mid-season. And it was one of those things like, hey, you got to pick a guy. And they ultimately went with Walker in the back end of the season. And I think the Spartans knew that they wanted to commit to him long term. And it was one of these things like, okay, there might be some growing pains because he didn't start the season. We saw that in some games versus Wyoming and some other conference games over the course of the season. But as the season went on, he continued to improve. And I think ultimately here for 2025, he's been named the starter since National Signing Day, which pretty much since the portal opened. So this is his team. And all the people that I talked to, all the coaches, all the players, all of his teammates that I've talked to said he understands that is his team. And I think that's what's most important because he's been able to be the day one starter since we've pretty much flipped the calendar to 2025. And I think that's very important in terms of building rapport for this season.
You mentioned the line. I mean, they had 2 guys on the all conference team. So there's high expectations on that offensive line now as well. With the I don't know how to. I'm sorry, I'm gonna butcher his name, but Passetti Lupa and Gafafaga. That those are they're that you need on that offensive line. Even if you have a revolving door at those other positions, you can have 2 solid pieces that can hold down and protect Eggett as needed. And I think, like you mentioned, that running game, when it is much improved in those games, like that game against UNLV last year, that was in the slop, in the rain, and really, really needed that running game.
Yeah. No, you saw it like where, and by the way, that was the worst, I would say, weather that we had in San Jose in the last calendar year. Like it just ironically happened to be that it was going to be an absolute monsoon on a Friday night primetime game with the Rebels and the Spartans that day. But yeah, you saw like in wet weather where you got a bunch of California kids who have not really been exposed to the elements and they're playing in beautiful San Jose on an 80-degree sunny day on a 4 p.m. kickoff on a Saturday, right? Like those, you're obviously accustomed to that. And, when you're dealing with the monsoon and you're a pass heavy offense and you're not ready to really deal with things on the ground game. And the offensive line, despite the game being in like week 11, week 12, was really still not fully acclimated and intact to where they wanted to be. That was a game where you're like, oh boy, like this could be a long day, especially with what Jet Thomas brings to the table for the Rebels. So yeah,
Yeah, they
that was
really utilized Aj in that game as well on the
yeah,
ground.
no, yeah, that was definitely like it was just one of those games where when you're running an offense like the spread and shred in the rain and the offensive line in the ground game really hasn't been the strength. You knew you were going to have to win the game with takeaways, low scoring affairs and San Jose State was able to hang around in that game for about 3 quarters and then fourth quarter it was Haj Malik Williams and company really went to work.
For San Jose State defensively.
Yeah, defensively, they definitely want to be better. There was some situations last year, especially early on, where you're like, wow, this team really won them some games. I point to a game week 2 last year at Air Force and a coin flip game at Research Stadium versus Oregon State, where a game was just really hanging there. This defense won them some games, but at the same time, it also cost them some games as well. They were 60th in total defense a year ago. So, you want those numbers to probably get better. I'll tell you what, Mike, this team was not so great versus mobile quarterbacks. You saw that with Haj Malik Williams, Brendan Lewis, John Mateer tore him up in Pullman, Washington last year. So they got to get better in that regard. Just ultimately, just making the tackles. Third down defense was not the greatest last year. And, overall, just tackling for this team just needs to improve. I think the numbers will improve. They got 8th-year defensive coordinator Derek Odom and a defense that ultimately doesn't get a whole lot of respect, I would say, just amongst the Mountain West. Like Coach Odom, like this guy and his defense will win you, I would say, 1 to 2 games just purely based on the game plan because San Jose State plays Air Force Air Force, for the most part, has, I would say, struggled like two of the last three matchups for San Jose State's defense. So that's a game, that I have circled, that could be a coin flip game, towards, the middle of the season here. But yeah, the defense definitely needs to improve, but there is going to be a game or two this year where you're like, wow, the Spartan defense won them that game.
What's you've been at, obviously you've been at camps and watched everything come leading up to, they play week 1, so leading up to week 1 in fall camp, who stars to shine that people may not know, or your breakout players on the defense side of the ball?
Yeah, defensive side of the ball. So it's San Jose State. They're going to be relying on Jordan Pollard a bunch. I've always told people that San Jose State's had really just individual under the radar linebackers over the years, and it's been pretty much a pipeline now. Jordan Pollard, I would say, is a prime example this year. He was back, he was on this team last year, had 115 tackles. They returned him. And, Taniela Latu, who I would say is the big time vocal leader on this defense, he's back. Between Pollard and Latu, they'll be pretty solid. No Fafana, San Jose State has also had, just great, I would say individual pass rushers as well. Cade Hall and Junior Fahoko over the years. Sawane Toia was the prime example last year. No Fafana has a chance to kind of be in that elite company this year as that guy to really break out. And in the secondary, there's some unknowns at the cornerback position with Malachi Crawford and Caleb Presley coming from two Big Ten schools. We're going to see them, I imagine, in week 1 really take the field for the first time really in their collegiate career. But, just a guy I expect to really, I would say, eclipse and take the next step in the right direction is a guy in Jalen Applett-Williams at the safety position. Big time leader. He's 23 years old. He's been on the San Jose State roster since like 2020. Like this guy is, he's an aging veteran. And, I talked to him one-on-one. He said, all I'm worried about is that our defense is ready for week 1 versus Central Michigan. Like you can tell that this guy's been playing for a long time. And I think this is the year where, after staying in the San Jose State pipeline for all these years, I think this could be his big time year where, he really blows up some things on the stat sheet here.
When you look at all, there's always a few games that you circle as make or break moments. For San Jose this year, what games do you think are circled the most inside that locker room?
Well, definitely the Fresno State game in the season finale. San Jose State and Fresno State don't like each other. I talked to the Fresno kids at Mountain West Media Day, and they're like, we simply just don't like the guys in blue and gold. The games in San Jose this year, the game kind of got a little bit rowdy last year, which is always good for a rivalry game. You want that. But, Coach Ken didn't really like the chippiness and the guys really talking. He said it was probably a distraction, that it was just outside of their character and, what he preaches over there. San Jose State got taken to the woodshed in the rivalry game last year. It was ultimately a disaster on the scoreboard. So that's a game that's definitely circled just because they want to bring the Valley Trophy back to the Bay Area. And, obviously the Texas game is probably circled there. But I'm going to say, on the coaching staff for these guys, Hawaii. Hawaii is always a big time game. Coach Kenny Amontalolo, Craig Stutzman, their offensive line coach John Estes. This is just a coaching staff that's got tons of background in Hawaii. The games in San Jose this year, but they're always playing the Hawaii Bowl. There's just a lot of ties to the Hawaiian Islands. So I think that's a game that they'll definitely be ready for. And I think that is one of the games, San Jose State versus Hawaii, shootout central in the Bay Area, because those are going to be two high-flying offenses this year.
He's a very underrated team, I think. Mike Aljado from their starting quarterback, his one start last year, he went crazy. He played his high school ball in Vegas, and he was one of those guys that stayed in the Mountain West, but then I don't know if Barry Odom recruited him. So that could be a little, he's trying to prove something. I mean, UNLV plays Hawaii as well. And, that game for UNLV, they play for the Golden Pineapple. And, that's games in Vegas with a quarterback like that. That's going to be, he's going to try and prove. So what other games, which ones do you see as real swing games that could make or break their season? Because obviously betting is really big right now and everywhere. And Vegas has San Jose State's win total at 7.5. So, which is where obviously that shows that they have a lot of coin flip games.
Yeah, most definitely. Obviously I would say there's a there's a stretch in the schedule where I'm gonna really learn about this team to see how if the noise is really real. You know, San Jose State's always kind of been, the basement of the preseason polls, underdog mentality. That's not the case this year. They got to go out and win games. They're going to be the favorites in some of these games. I look to a game in Palo Alto at Stanford. I know Stanford's very low on everybody's power rankings in the ACC and just the Power Four as a whole. We'll see them this Saturday on the Hawaiian Islands, but that's a rivalry game. That's a game where, it's a long lasting rivalry. Hasn't been so, really, over the years because they stopped playing the series, but they've brought it back. It's very precious out here in the Bay Area. So San Jose State and Stanford, the game is in Palo Alto this year. I would imagine, maybe not the greatest attendance game, but still a game that's probably going to be circled on everybody's calendar out here in the Bay Area just because of, what that game means to just all the alums of both San Jose State and Stanford. But the one portion of the schedule that I think the whole league is going to figure out if San Jose State's real or not, at Wyoming, at Utah State. That's back-to-back road trips in elevation. I've kind of talked about like the elements can, how the California kids, really mesh in those, certain environments. Last time San Jose State played Wyoming in Laramie, the game was kind of hanging there. Ultimately, Chevin Cordero and company were able to pull that game off and, really take the Cowboys there in the end of the fourth quarter there. But I think they had that same road trip at Utah State and they dropped that game. Bronco Mendenhall's teams are always extremely well coached. And I think that Aggie team's going to get better as the season goes on. So that stretch definitely scares me. You can't go 0-2 in that stretch. It wouldn't shock me if they go 1-1 though, and that's kind of, the quote unquote trap game at Utah State, especially if they win that Wyoming game on the road first. That game is a Friday night too, so I'd imagine that game will be circled on a lot of the Aggie herd calendars, out there with that rowdy student section.
Like you mentioned, Bronco Mendenhall teams always get better towards the end of the year. New Mexico looked a lot better than they did at the beginning of the year last year. And, when he has resources and he has talent, Bryson Barnes is a very good quarterback.
But yeah.
When Bronco always has a good quarterback, he's going to compete. And Utah State has more of a talent than New Mexico did last year.
Yes,
So
they certainly do.
And Pierre looked amazing. Obviously, it led him to transfer to a P4 in Utah. So what is Bryson Barnes going to do in a similar system like that?
But yeah, I think Bryson Barnes is going to have a really good year. I mean, we saw, I imagine a lot of people weren't watching Utah State when, on the back end of last year, but he really tore defenses apart with his legs and with his arm. We'll see. The wide receiver position is kind of very much in the air. Like it's a bunch of these wide receivers that okay, let's see it in week 1 versus UTEP. It's kind of, just a mystery. Maybe, the Utah State fan base might know about it, but maybe Mountain West fans might necessarily know about it. But I'm interested to see what that team looks like. I think they're going to be, good in some situations this year.
They missed. They had a UNLV transfer in Corey Thompson Jr. and they just announced him that he's out for the season.
Yeah.
So that's a big blow already to that offense.
Yeah, that's no good. But hey, I'd expect that team's going to be very feisty, especially in the second half of the year. I know, Coach Mendenhall, he'll have the team ready. I know he's playing Boise State like on the final game of the year or something. I know Boise always wins that game, but you're going to see especially towards the back end of the year, some of these basement teams in the league this year are gonna be feisty down the stretch, especially if they're flirting around that 4 or 5 win mark, trying to get over the hump for bowl eligibility. So I'm interested to see. I have to say, Mike, and I was at Mountain West Media Days about over a month ago now. When you really think about it, there is a lot of good coaches in the Mountain West. And there's a lot of guys that, have been around the block, have been at several different places. And, they come into these Mountain West institutions and you're like, wow, the resumes are really good. Outside of
very
Sean
underrated,
Lewis,
like Jason Eck. And
yeah,
he's probably, and he's most schools have, and he's probably the 6th or 7th best coach in Mountain West. And that's how deep the coaching talent is. When you have Danielson and Dan Mullen, Neil Moto, and then you have Calhoun at Air Force. There are staffs everywhere that as you can say, is very well coached. And that's what's interesting that I think is very underrated when you look at the new Mountain West, when the Mountain West 5 leave. it's you're still gonna have a Dan Mullen and Troy Calhoun and Ken Niamaloto, and then you're still gonna have you're gonna still have quality coaches in the league, and Choate and like Choate is a very good coach, especially on the G5 level. Granted, the rivalry thing with UNLV, but I hope that they can win a conference game this year, and I feel like they will.
Oh yeah.
It's been a very rough stretch for UNR football.
No, it really has. Last year, I know with them being your in-state rival, you're definitely keeping tabs on the Wolfpack there, but they were in a lot of close games last year and they just couldn't get over the hump. Like the San Jose game, the Boise game. There was a bunch of
I
those.
think they didn't win a conference game. They finished, I think they had 3 wins last year, and they lost 7 games by 1 score. Like,
Correct.
they were
Yeah.
right there. They could have easily been 10-3, like,
Yeah. Look at
or
the
even
week 0
6 and
game
6
versus
and make a
SMU
bowl game.
last year.
It's crazy, like, there's so many the other underrated thing is there's so many it's going to be so hostile going to these environments because of the anger and the angst of some of these schools leaving. Like, UNLV Boise is already a big game as it is now, especially since Barry Odom took over. But throwing in that UNLV and that Boise State's leaving, with the rivalry games between just in the league, like UNLV and UNR always it is what it's a rivalry game. It's pretty heated. They talk their trash. UNLV's won 7 out of the last 10 in that series, even with their down years. So it's been kind of a very one sided. But you're still going to have people are going to go into those San Diego State games, those New Mexico games. It's going to, especially basketball and football, it's going to be very hostile. It's going to be, it's going to be brutal.
Yeah. No, it definitely is. And, I think that's going to be some situations like in the Mountain West this year, like the team that is departing for the Pac 12 and versus the squad that is staying in the Mountain West. Like there's going to be some like the border war. Perfect example. Colorado State versus Wyoming. I think the game's in Laramie this year. Like how are you not going to take Wyoming? Like they're not going to be playing the series. I don't think. Like I don't think they're playing it next year. But like they're taking a break and then they're reigniting it again. So like there's certain spots. Like I know Colorado State is not playing Air Force anymore. Like I want like if you're a betting man, like you got to really consider Air Force for that game. Like, like there is certain situations where those rivalry games are going to be circled on the calendar because the series is going to take a pause for a little bit. So I'm very interested to see how it all pans out. But, just going back to like our previous point here, like with all the head coaches, like outside of like Sean Lewis at San Diego State, there really isn't like, a lot of unproven guys in this league. Like Sean
Timmy
Lewis was
Chang,
at
I think Timmy
yeah,
Chang he's working, he's trying to really build that program. I think that they've really put themselves as a whole, as a program, just in a very tough spot in the NIL situation. And
right.
that's not his fault. He's doing the best that he can, but he's trying to build that culture and get them back to where they were to go.
Yeah, no, I think Hawaii's going to get a bowl. They're going to get 6 wins this year overall.
So what is your prediction for San Jose State football this year?
So I personally got San Jose State second, in the polls. I would have to put them behind Boise State. Boise State, I do think that the Boise State is going to slip up along the way here. They're going to probably lose the Notre Dame game and they're going to be ready for that one. I know everybody loves Boise for South Florida over Boise. I think the Broncos will get out of that game alive, but in conference play, I do think Boise State is going to lose one of those conference games this year. I have San Jose State with the 9-3 record overall and 6-2 in Mountain West play. There's just a lot between Coach Ken, really good coach, Coach Ken Niamaloto, the offensive scheme with Craig Stutzman, the defense. I expect it to get better. Walker Eggett taking a step in the right direction at quarterback. I think the coaching staff learning from some of their mistakes last year with their play calls, in particular the Boise State game. I know that game and Coach Ken and his decisions still haunt him to this day for that game. So I think overall, this is going to be a very disciplined group, a team that's going to score a lot of points. I think despite losing Nick Nash, they'll be ready.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but hitting what you said, like going back to what we were just talking about, the circling the games because those schools are leaving. San Jose State wants their shot at Boise.
Oh yeah.
And UNLV wants Boise. So like those games, like you mentioned, if San Jose gets to the Mountain West Championship and plays Boise, they are going to be amped and up, whether that game is in Boise or in San Jose. Like there's a whole different, especially if it's a potential playoff spot on the line, that game is going to be elevated like crazy.
And let me just say this, Mike, too. Go look back at those scores versus San Jose State versus Boise State. We talked about the game last year. The final score was misleading. 2 years ago, the Spartans and the Broncos played in Boise when Jevin Cordero was at quarterback, and they had a 17-point lead in that game. Like, these games are always close. It's just the Spartans find a way to blow it in the second half in the last couple of times that they've played. So whether the game's in Boise or in San Jose, which, by the way, San Jose's never hosted a Mountain West championship game ever. So can you imagine the atmosphere for that type of situation if it happens? So there's a lot on the line for San Jose State this year. They got the schedule to do it. They got definitely the roster to go up and down and outscore some teams. It's just in those situational spots and in those coin flip games, can they close it out?
With you, Boise's really going to miss Ashton Genty, and I don't think people understand the production that he had. Obviously, 2,600 yards is nothing to shy away from, and it's very hard to replace that. It's going to the early signs are going to be, what can Maddox Natson do? Is the expectation of what he is, or is he not? And it's going to show how much is he protected was protected by Ashton Genty. And people called me crazy. I thought I had them going 9-3, and I had them losing twice in conference play. Once I think UNLV can get them if they're the right. People forget that, like, UNLV is coming off. They're gonna have 2 weeks. They're gonna have the game I'm worried about for UNLV is the Air Force game, because they're coming off a bye week. They play Air Force with Boise looming on the horizon. Like, that's a trap game for them.
Yeah.
I think I had Boise slipping to Air Force. I think, one of those schools is going to get them. And if it's it's going to be one of the departing schools. It's just going to be a matter of who. And I think I am on that train that I think USF gets them. And I do think I think they're going to lose to Notre Dame. But I had them at 8-4, 9 conference losses, and that was to Air Force and UNLV. And I got called crazy for that, but I think it's realistic, honestly.
No, it's definitely realistic. And I think, everyone's talking about the Genty departure. The offensive line's going to be good. It was good last year, and the unit wasn't even healthy. Guy that they're going to miss that not a lot of people are talking about is Ahmed Hassanin on the defensive line. Like, that D line is going to take a massive drop off. They're going to need Braxton Feely to really blow up the line of scrimmage there. They got some pieces there, but I think that's the one unit where, running back might take a little bit of a downgrade, but I think the D line and, the push that they get off the line of scrimmage might be even a bigger drop off than what they had
Plus,
last year.
they have a new OC too.
Yeah. New OC too. Yeah.
Now gone. Yep. So it's going to be interesting. I think this year is going to be a lot of fun across all the sports in Mountain West, but especially football. Teams that can be competitive, sneak up on you. But like you mentioned, San Jose's in a very good spot. Utah State could be bottom dweller, or be a complete flip with Bronco Mendenhall. San Diego State, I think, is still going to be down at the bottom. But you have Air Force always bounce 2 bad years in a row. So they're going to be competitive and better. UNLV is still going to stay the same. Boise is a question mark. I mean, they're going to be good, but it's a question mark of how good.
Right.
So there's a year that the league is wide open for a team that is not Boise State to win it. It's this year.
100%. And, Mike, I was actually having a really difficult time, really, in a sense of who's going to finish last in this league. Like, because I expect Nevada to improve, with all due respect to your fan base and all the UNLV fans out there. I don't think Nevada's going to, have 0 conference wins. Like, they're going to be better. Like, New Mexico, I think, is going to be feisty. I like Jason Eck and the continuity that they have with Jack Lane. Like,
their running back room is very underrated.
Yeah, 100%. Like, as crazy as it sounds, like, and I had a really hard time doing it, but like San Diego State and last, as good as like the defenses, like the quarterback has always been an issue for them. Like, I don't know what I'm getting at receiver. Like, I actually picked San Diego State last, and maybe it might be one of those situations like I regret it, maybe not, but I just respect a lot of these coaches.
I picked New Mexico to finish last. I think they're going to be very competitive, and they're going to be in games, but I just don't think they're there yet. It needs another recruiting cycle, but their schedule is also very brutal.
Yeah,
So is Nevada's. Nevada or UNR. I'm sorry, I'm not going to refer to them as Nevada. UNR is their schedule is very difficult also. So I think that, like, if I'm going to pull up schedule real quick. I mean, they play.
their non-conference is dangerous.
I mean, they play at Penn State. They play Brendan Marion and Sac State. Like, I mean, they play at Fresno, they play Boise, they play at Utah State, they play San Jose State in Reno, they play at Wyoming, and they play UNLV. Like, I don't know where they get a conference win unless it's the New Mexico game. I don't like it. San Jose State's going to be ready to go. UNLV is going to be ready to go. Boise's going to be ready to go. Fresno is on the road, which is not an easy place to play. I think they're, looking at their schedule, there's two spots that I think that they can win one or two conference games, and that's at home against San Diego State, and they travel to New Mexico. But like other than that, I don't think they're. I mean, granted, anything can happen. It's football, but I don't think they're there yet to compete with where UNLV's at and Boise's at and San Jose State's at. Like, I think, and then going to play Bronco on the road, like, it's very difficult in my opinion. But, New Mexico's is the same way. It's like it is. They have it's brutal. I think New Mexico, I think, misses UNLV this year, if I remember right.
Yeah. I will just say, just to go on, we're talking about the schedule for Nevada and just the Wolfpack there. That non-conference. I was looking at it, just big picture with everybody else's. That is a scary non-conference. The Penn State, I mean, they're going to get drilled. But that Sac State team, like, they got Power 5 dudes. They got 4-star recruits out there. Like, they got Jaden Rashada, and obviously that scheme as a Rebel fan. They'll be ready for it.
And you know that Brennan Marion's going to try to prove a point too,
Oh,
and
yeah.
try to win that game. He's going to be very prepared to win that game.
Yeah, people are gonna figure out too how good that Western Kentucky offense is when they watch it on Saturday too. So all I'm gonna say,
Like I looked at New Mexico, they play San Jose on the road, Boise on the road, UNLV on the road. They play Air Force on the road. Like, their three conference games at home are Utah State, San Diego State, and Colorado State.
and that they're getting that Utah State game.
Realistically, like, nothing against Eck. He can be he has, like, they could be really good, but it's also that schedule is not easy. You have to
No.
play basically the top 3 projected teams on the road.
No, New Mexico, we understand. They got some work to do. I would say, to really sum up their team. When you just look up and down their roster, it's an FCS All-Star team. They brought in guys from Idaho, Weber State, Montana State with Scott Trey Humphrey, like Jack Lane from Idaho. They got guys, just from all over the place. Like, that is going to be. The schedule's very difficult, but there's going to be some spots where they're just hanging in this game, and that they could be this year's Nevada, right? Where they maybe go 0-8 or winless in conference, but they're losing by a field goal and a touchdown in a lot of these games. So I don't know.
You're a sleeper team for the Mountain West.
Man, I have a whole lot of respect for Air Force. I thought they were kind of picked a little too low. Troy Calhoun is an awesome coach. Great human being. All the Air Force kids are very confident. I will say, and I said this, I've been telling everybody this. Make sure you want to see what Air Force's offense is going to look like. Watch the week 1 game versus Bucknell. I know it's Bucknell, but last year Air Force played Merrimack, and I had all eyes on that game because they had San Jose State on deck week 2, and I'm like, this offense doesn't look right, and it didn't look right with John Boucher. So I don't know who the quarterback is going to be between Josh Johnson and Liam Zarka for the Air Force Falcons, but if they're humming offensively versus Bucknell, the league better buckle up.
Yep, they're my sleeper team too, I think. Like, they don't have 2 bad years in a row.
No,
like you said, you watch them play that first game. If they're prepped, ready to go, it could be a long year for some schools. If they're not, they're going to take a back seat. But at the end of the day too, they're not going to back down either. They're not going to roll over when they play schools. They're going to give you everything that they got.
100%. And they got, obviously, they take a whole lot of pride in the commander in chief, but the Colorado State game and the Wyoming game are also, big games for them as well. As far as conference is concerned, I always enjoy, when Air Force and San Jose get together, just because those are always, for the most part, low scoring grudge matches. And man, like, those two guys know each other very well. Obviously, Ken Niumatalolo from his time at Navy, and Troy Calhoun's been at Air Force for forever. So those coaches know each other extremely well. There's a whole lot of familiarity across the board, and I just think, like, when San Jose and Air Force get together, it doesn't matter where you put them. It's going to be a good game, and I think Air Force, if they look good out and they come out, scoring touchdowns out of the gate, the Mountain West, they're gonna wish that Air Force was Air Force from last year.
Yeah. Well, Nick, thank you for doing this with me. We should definitely catch up in the middle of the season as well. This was great. Sorry I was a little late, but
All good, man. Appreciate you having me on. It was a great conversation. I love it because I think the Mountain West is in the forefront, to be what they were last year as far as being that G5 representative, and you can make a lot of cases for some teams this year. So it's going to be an exciting season. I'm glad that we got 3 Mountain West teams in week 0 this weekend. So I think if you're a fan of this league, you got a whole lot of reason to be watching week 0.
I don't think UNLV's shown much. I don't think they're going to show because if Sam Houston's playing a D1, I don't think they're going to show much. I think you're going to see what the real UNLV looks like week 1 against Sam Houston State, and it's going to be interesting too. They're that line is out. They're a very heavy favorite in that game already, and let's see what they look like. First road test, short week. That welcome them out. What's football?
Let me tell you, that Sam Houston defense, not going to be good. And that game is actually, it's on the road, but Sam Houston's not playing games in Huntsville this year. They're playing at Houston, Texas. Their stadium's being renovated. So that's going to be a neutral site game pretty much.
Yeah, it's very similar to the Kansas game they played last year in the soccer stadium.
We'll see, man. I'm very excited to watch your Rebels this year because I love Dan Mullen. That guy's an absolute character. But you bring in all these recruits. Defensively, you got some power 4 guys. Offensively, who knows what the quarterback's going to be? I love Jet Thomas. Like they're just, and obviously with the change in schemes both ways, I kind of, in a sense, don't really know what I'm going to get out of you guys, especially with some of the wide receivers. So I'm very excited to see what the Rebels bring.
Biggest thing with UNLV is they're going to be make or break based off of the quarterback play. I think.
Yep, I'm
think
right there with you.
I think whoever does start on a very short leash.
Well, yeah,
that's my.
And I think the Saturday game versus Idaho State, you said they might not show too much, but I think it's also an audition for who takes the full-time role.
Mullen came out and said that both guys are going to play. So we'll see who takes that first snap. That may not be indicative of who starts, but I think it's going to be pretty even split until that game's going to get out of hand.
Oh yeah.
Idaho State is very bad. They were picked 7th in the Big Sky. Like they have a lot of new guys too. I was doing a breakdown of them. They got 6. So, it's the era that we live in. Every school's going to have 50, 60 new guys every year, especially if you're G5 or lower. So they have guys who want to prove something too. But, I think the key for UNLV in that game is get out of that game healthy. Don't get banged up. Don't show too much, but win that game handily, reps, and go from there. My expectation for UNLV is I've been very high on them. I think they're going to go 11-1. That's my expectation. I think that the UCLA game is the game that other than UCLA and obviously the Boise game, there's the UCLA game. You've been to Allegiant Stadium, right?
I have not. I got to get to a game out there. I'm in Vegas like 4 times a year. So it just happens to be I'm just never there in season or when San Jose is playing UNLV. So it's definitely I got to get out to one of the games out there. I don't know. We'll see what the schedule provides next year. I imagine San Jose is due to go out there again the following season. So I definitely got to get out there to Allegiant.
They were mentioning for that game against UCLA that they just started selling the 3rd deck. So that means it's going to cut the 50. So that game,
that's important for you.
Like you mentioned, some of those schools that are like can sneak up on teams. The 2 games I'm worried about for UNLV, I get knocked for this, but it's Colorado State and Wyoming, both on the road. And UNLV, obviously, a lot of demons over the last couple of years. But there's 2 that they haven't hit yet. They haven't won at Colorado State since 2003, and they haven't won at Wyoming since 2002. So there's still 2 demons you got to get over. And those places are in elevation, not easy to play. So those are more than UCLA and Boise game. Those are the 2 games I'm worried about. I think you'll get those. You'll see what they got real quick because the back half of their schedule is very weak. So if they can get through the first 5 or 6 weeks of UCLA, the Miami of Ohio games are going to be a more difficult game than people realize.
100%.
It's Miami of Ohio is a very good football team, and you're traveling there. It's probably going to be a morning kickoff on the East Coast. It's going to be a very tough game. for them.
Yeah, I have to say, I have to say, Mike, we gotta pull up a database from like the last 5 years of the Mountain West traveling to the MAC in these MAC venues because I imagine it's got to be pretty close to even. I remember San Jose went to Toledo like a few years back. And just overall, these Mountain West and MAC teams head to head. The MAC team, say what you will about the MAC, but those teams kind of come ready. We saw Central Michigan beat San Diego State last year. Like there's just kind of like those weird games when you kind of get out there in the middle of nowhere in Michigan, weird stuff happens. So yeah, I'm with you. The UNLV Miami Ohio game, the Red Hawks got into Quan Finback, who tore that league up a few years back. So hey, just don't take any of these games lightly.
Nope, absolutely not. Well, thank you again. I know it went a little longer than what we said, but I appreciate everything. And yeah, I'll definitely keep in touch with you and we can do this again middle of the year and uh, talk about where they're at and what the expect.
100%, Mike. We'll be talking down the road. Appreciate you for reaching out and thanks for having me on the show tonight.
Yep, I can't wait to watch San Jose State this year. I think they have the chance to do something special.
Yeah, looking forward to the season, man. Great to talk to you. Thanks for the time.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Well, that's a wrap for this episode of the Scarlet Standard. I will be back tomorrow to do a couple more previews. I will also have an interview with UNLV wide receiver Coy Moore. Tune in Twitter. Make sure you follow Nick on Twitter as well at Nick Urias _. But yeah, if you have any questions, any comments, leave them below. But thank you for tuning in.